Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back. I'm from after lunch. We are so happy you are back with us here again. I am super excited to introduce this panel. Mike Oteri, who is my co-organizer, he's like, "This was your." There he is. He's back there waving at me. He's like, "This was your idea. Get up there and introduce them." So, yay! I'm super excited about this. As many of you know, WordPress is open source, which means it only survives by people showing up and helping it to progress. And there are WordPress releases that go on throughout the year. Plenty of volunteers on there, some that are paid and sponsored by organizations, some that are not, that help us create what it is that we use on a day in and day out basis. And travel with me back in time before the pandemic. And it was WordPress Help Me Josepha 5.6 that Josepha Haden had the idea for an all-woman and gender non-binary release squad. Because women finding a place in tech, shocker, sometimes is a difficult path. And they did it. They did it. We rocked it. We got it out there on time. And they all have amazing stories to tell, and they all participated in different capacities on this release squad and contributing to WordPress beyond that. There are so many areas and ways you can contribute, whether you code, whether you design, whether you don't. There is a place for you. So to introduce our panel, we have Josepha Haden, who will be our MC, Michelle Frechette, who is one of the participants, Courtney Robertson, who's one of the participants, and Ebonie Butler. So without further ado, Josepha, take it away and lead us on this journey.
The journey into the center of WordPress. All right, well, excellent. As Laura said, we worked together on the all-women and non-binary WordPress release, which was 5.6, titled Josephine. I thought that was really appropriate as far as names of jazzers to include. And before we get started, I do want you all to just kind of go down the line. I'm going to start with you. This is your warning shot. Go down the line, tell us your name again, and then what it was that you did with the release, and if you came to WordPress through a specific team or initiative, which one that was. So those three things.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Ebonie Butler. I'm a senior software engineer at PMC. And for the release, I was a release coordinator. So basically, I ran the dev chats every week. I did the release announcement post. I ran the release parties. And I constantly talked to the triage lead to make sure that the track tickets that were set to be released, set for release, were moving. So that was my role in the release.
I'm Courtney Robertson. I am a dev advocate these days at GoDaddy Pro. I contribute to the WordPress project through the training team. Our team makes the content that goes out on learn.wordpress.org. And during this release, I was just beginning to resurface. I had taken some time off from contributing, and I had just begun to resurface and try reassembling a team to get some content that would be related to 5.6 launched right around the time. And so that was actually kind of new. The team hadn't been releasing content related to releases yet.
I'm Michelle Frechette, and I am the Director of Community Engagement for Stellar WP. And I came to the WordPress project through camp mentorship as a WordCamp mentor, and then through a contributor day into the marketing team. And so I was on the marketing team for the release.
Very nice, excellent. All right, so I've got a handful of questions for you all. Full disclosure, we definitely talked before this. We definitely meet and chat sometimes. And so it's not like this is a bunch of gotchas, but we're going to act like it anyway. I have a handful of questions for you all, starting here. So for any of you, was this your first time contributing to Core? And if so, what was this particular experience like?
Yes, it was my first time contributing. Other than being on a marketing squad and things like that, but actually contributing to Core, and I had no idea what to expect. And I had no idea that we'd be doing shadowing prior on the release before that, learning a little bit of the ropes that way. Literally had no idea what to expect and didn't even know that marketing was part of a release. I was one of those people that assumed that if you didn't code, you couldn't be on a release squad, which is a very big misnomer, and it is absolutely not true, because I'm living proof of that, because I'm not a coder. So
I came in to the core channel, probably really started paying attention for the first time during that release. And as I recall, I was teaching at a boot camp at the time, front-end dev. And so I had pulled a few of the beta parts of the release and started walking my students through what was coming. And first time that I was really paying attention to the core channel. Yeah.
I think for me, I actually did my first core contribution at my first WordCamp. I went to a contributor day. I remember working with Jordan, who's now my boss. And we worked on a patch for the WordPress events widget on the dashboard. So it was definitely collaborative, but that definitely got my name in the commit history, so I'm proud of that. But in terms of kind of project managing and leading people and like talking to developers and organizing, that was always super intimidating. So when I got kind of offered to be the release coordinator, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But it was definitely a really great experience. I got to talk to a lot of people, get to know a lot of people who are really important and fun and really helpful in the WordPress community. And yeah, it was a great experience.
Anyone in the room learn about this event from the events widget that Ebonie contributed to? We got some. Like, I see like 3 hands. I love you all. I think it's great. Okay. All right, great. So second question that we have here. It sounds like, based on your answer, Ebonie, like there's more to releases, more to open source than you can see when you're on the outside of it. So as you all think back, like what do you wish you had known when I tweeted very blithely, like I wish I could have an all-women non-binary release, and then people are like, I can make that happen. Like, is there anything that you wish someone had said before you were like, me too, girl? Like what? That's for everybody, but you made me think of it.
Something I wish I would have known before the release are
Yeah, like as you were headed into it.
I think I wish I would have known how accepting everyone is in the WordPress community, because it can be very intimidating to join the WordPress Slack. There is so much going on all the time. You can get pinged a lot if you don't turn it off, and and you don't really know where to start. And so when I knew I always wanted to contribute code and patch and build features because I love coding. So when I joined the core channel and got intimidated by not really seeing anyone like me, everyone being mostly white male, I really didn't really want to do anything. I didn't really feel motivated to contribute, and it would have been nice to kind of have some introduction in some formal way to be like, hey, it's okay, you can contribute, and just kind of know that it's okay to participate and don't be intimidated, and you're welcome here.
I would say, similar to that, I had felt intimidated about the core channel previous to that release. Coming from a docs and training technical document writing perspective, we know that having those materials readily available at as close to release as we could have it really helps everybody adopt and use and be familiar with the changes, or even have somewhere to go to figure out, how do I use the new features, the new changes. But I personally didn't know how to overcome this, like, I need help interpreting what's changed, finding those sources, and then feeling confident enough to go ask the questions from the people that were doing that development. So this particular release, seeing the shift that happened through that, opened up the channels that I didn't feel awkward or uncomfortable asking those questions. Now I know I can go here or there or talk to this person or that person so that everybody else benefits by having these resources as close to release as we can get them out.
So I have two answers to this. The first is the information comes so quickly. The speed at which Slack just goes for this kind of thing is like faster than Twitter. It's crazy, and you have to keep up if you're going to keep on top of what's happening. So that was like the first thing, is that it's just, and that the 6 months you think doesn't sound like a lot of time until you start to get in it, and then you're like, oh crap, it's really happening fast. The other thing is I have this Pollyanna-ness to me. And so I always assume that people are going to be excited about new and exciting things, and that this release squad would be met with such like passion and excitement, and that people would really be behind us. And that did happen, but the opposite happened too. And so we did come under attack, some of us individually, some of us as a whole. And being part of the marketing team, navigating some of that was very eye-opening.
Absolutely. Something that you said, Courtney, is going to lead us beautifully into our next question. So you had mentioned that it's hard to get the confidence needed to go and ask questions of like the Jorbans of WordPress, or for what it's worth, the me's of WordPress. Like, it's just, I get it. And so not getting that confidence can make it really hard to keep things moving in open source, especially because like WordPress especially, but open source in general is kind of a shoulder-to-shoulder group. Like, we want to learn together by trying and doing. So what did you have to learn as far as like how to screw together your courage and get in there anyway, even though it was scary? Like, what did you learn about yourself and keeping open source moving and your part in that? And that's for everyone too, but you made me think of it, so you get to start.
First, there is a developer that was going to be an organizer for today, and he's homesick. I had spent some time working for the events calendar, and Gustavo is one of the organizers for this event, but unfortunately wasn't able to be here today. He's not feeling well. Having a couple of developer friends in my life that I can go to and talk to about the struggles, the thoughts that I was having. And so I had been doing technical document writing for the events calendar, a lot of the knowledge base I managed. Even there, I felt intimidated for a while as a woman in tech, coming from a teaching background, understanding the learning challenges people are going to have with what's shipping. And I was confronted with this, how satisfied was I with my job at the time? And it was a big wake-up call. I wasn't. And at that time, I wasn't contributing much. I have young children, and they were babies then. So I took some time off to do that. And in the process of getting to talk with other developers and be able to say, like, our customers are suffering because of this. Now, in WordPress, it's not customers directly. It's our users need this. Our people that are developing with WordPress need this. And so it's kind of like the beginning of when you're a new teacher and you're learning classroom management and you're learning how to deal with high school students only 4 years younger than you. Somewhere in that process, you just sort of kick it in, and you know who to talk to and who to go to, and you know that it matters enough that if you have your own personal stuff going on, but the other people that benefit from what you do are worth it, well, then you find a way to sort of meet that and work through some of that. And having people to go to about that really made a difference.
I definitely feel the same way. I was super thankful to have been a part of the release, and I believe Josepha, we had like a kind of a Zoom party with everyone. I remember that. And it was really cool. It was really motivating because I was still on the fence. I didn't really know if I could do a good job, and if I'd just get freaked out and just kind of feel out of place. But I remember, yeah, I think it was you, Josepha. You were like, hey, if anyone comes with you with any problems, come to me. So, and so that was really, really helpful. And that's really what people really need to do. Especially when someone's trying to get involved who doesn't look like everyone else. Like there's a lot of intimidation, a lot of anxiety. You saying that, hey, I got your back. Just, let me know if anything happens. I got your support. So that really instilled a lot of confidence in me. Also, Francesca Morano, she mentored me as a release coordinator, so I had a lot of weekly chats in the beginning with her. She's amazing, and she really made sure that I was kind of on my game and knew everything I needed to know. And it was just overall helpful. Like Sergey DM'd me, making sure that I was doing good. Jake Spurlock. And so it's just that kind of thing. Like, you may not talk to that person often, but like just saying like, hey, I'm here to support you, that just goes a really long way. And because all of those people took the time to do that, once or twice, like it really made my experience really, really memorable. And I learned a lot, and I didn't feel intimidated running these meetings and telling people what to do. So yeah, it's all about having that support and hearing from people that they have your back, for sure.
I have never lacked confidence, so I didn't have any confidence issues. But for me, it was the time management issue. And so if I was intimidated by anything, it was my own inability to manage my time efficiently. And then the guilt that comes in when you feel like you're not contributing to your team enough.
We heard a wow. Did anyone, was there an additional, or was it a wow out there? It was an out there wow. Okay. If you have a thought or question, we're going to have Q&A time, so don't lose it. Don't lose your wow. I lost my wow. Oh, no. Oh, yes. Haha. Okay. If we have time at the super end, because I want to hear mostly y'all's perspective, but I will tell you about my first experience of running a release in WordPress. It was 5.0. If we have time at the end, I will tell you about the horrifying experience that was and why it was really important to me to, from that moment, from my experience until when we did this in 2020, to fix all the systemic issues that we had in WordPress that made it so hard and so scary for me, so that y'all had a little bit better time of all of that. But, so, you said a thing. It's like they knew what I wanted to ask. You said a thing that I would like to dig into a bit more. So you had mentioned, like, it's hard to feel like you are letting members of your team down. And I know that we've talked over the years, all of us, how hard it is to like measure your contributions when you can't tell how everybody else's contributions fit. Like, I have 40 hours a week to give to WordPress, but not everybody does. And so people who are not contributing at my level should never feel embarrassed to compare themselves to my level, because like, bleh. Like, no one is doing 40 hours a week of just this, but we don't always know that. And so my big question here is that release had a good mix of types of contributors, like self-sponsored or sponsored by a company, 40 hours or 4 hours. And so I want y'all to take a second to think about how you identified as a contributor in that moment. Like, in that moment, if a contributor like you were to come up today after this and say, like, what advice do you wish you had been given before you got started? A little different from what did you wish you'd known? Like, what would that advice have been? And you can tell us, like, I was self-sponsored. I was willing to give 5 hours if that's helpful. So
I was self-sponsored. I did work for Give WP at the time, and they were great about my flex schedule and things like that. But I think if I had to go back and say, I wish somebody had said to me, do this, it would be for me to be more communicative with what was happening in my personal life at the time, so that if I knew this week I could only give 2 hours, I was not feeling guilty about it and trying to do more than I actually could, and communicating with my team to say, this is all I can give this week, I can do more next week, and have that give and play. And I think, I can only speak for myself, but I think as women, we tend to not want to nobody wants to let people down. But as women, we take on guilt for a lot of that kind of thing. And nobody should leave a release squad feeling guilty about having given what they could give. But I think that if somebody had said to me at the beginning, all you need to do is be open about your availability and what you can do, the team will work with you about those things. And so on those weeks when I could only give 2 hours and I could try to write tweets and read over documentation or read over the things that we were going to be putting in blogs, and if I knew then what I know now, I would say just be open, be honest, and don't kill yourself about it, because this is a team for a reason. There are people who can pick up the slack, and next week or next month, you'll pick up the slack. That's what team's about. But not kind of having that right mindset and that like growing up woman, take it on, do it all, suck it up, and just feel guilty about what you can't do. That needs to go, and you need to leave that at the door, because you are contributing, whether it's an hour a week or 40 hours a week, and it's all valuable and it's all valid.
At that time, I was self-sponsored. So I was teaching in a boot camp, and I was able to do a little bit that overlapped, right? So if I was going to be teaching my students about a new feature or something, I would make double purpose with that time. I would make the stuff for the training team and double dip and use it then with my students, and that made perfect sense. And the thing, though, that if I could do, one, advocate for my time allocated, asking my then employers, who one came from Drupal and so understands the value of open source already. I didn't even ask. I was technically a contractor. And so I don't know, maybe they would have, so where I could make it align for double purpose, I would. Communicating the value as it relates to my work, I think would also go a little further. But again, at that point, I kind of lacked the confidence to even do that, or to show up in core. Like, it wasn't until I was lurking in core during this release. But I didn't even have the courage yet to be able to say, I, as training team rep, would like to be there. And that didn't happen until I kind of got over me and some of my insecurities. And I just started showing up, and nobody was needing to invite me. I just started asking the questions, and no one was beating me away for doing so, right? And that's the change that happened.
For me, so the company, Yikes, I was working for at the time, paid for my WordPress contribution, like allocated hours, which was awesome. And so what I wish I would have known before I started, is definitely related to what's already been said. Knowing your worth and knowing how much time you have, and not comparing yourself to everyone else who is contributing and doing it all day, and you see all these commits in the Slack channel, you're like, I'm not doing anything, but they're paid to do that, so remember. And so, especially with me being really into contributing to core and writing patches, I did find myself getting really frustrated in the beginning, just out of lack of experience. There was one instance where I wrote a patch, and then someone else wrote a patch, and they took their patch, and I didn't really quite understand what was going on. But things like that happen because there are people who kind of run who are in charge and review the patches and have commit access. And so sometimes it'll be so slow and no one responds to your patch and no one responds to your solution. And sometimes they will literally have this whole conversation over the next hour and then have this patch and merge it. So it can go so fast sometimes, it can go really slow sometimes. That's just the nature of open source because we're all, doing it on our time. Some people have more time than others. So I really had to kind of learn that, experience that, and get over that kind of initial frustration of sometimes not having my patch accepted, and that's okay. But I did learn the value of communication and just commenting on the track tickets and having open dialogue and realizing also that my opinion matters because I am writing a patch and this is what I think the solution is, and this is my opinion. And originally I was really intimidated by the back and forth of like everyone who has so much more experience than me coming up with a solution. But then I was like, you know what, my voice matters too. So here's what I think too. So just remember that your opinion matters when you're looking to a GitHub issue or on the core track. And if you have something that you want to say about what the solution is for this problem, then you have every right to say that.
Wonderful. I've got one final question for you all. And so that means that if y'all have some questions, now is the time to join the microphone lines. And if you don't want to join the microphone line, you can raise your hand and either someone will bring you a microphone or I will repeat your question if you're loud enough. Before I get to the final question, I do want to just clarify for everybody that this was a diversity initiative for WordPress. That was intentional, it was active, but it was the end of 2 or 3 years worth of work to make sure that WordPress could sustain that, and that when we were asking women and non-binary folks to come into this process with us, it was better and easier than it had been for other people. And so I realize we did almost no talking about DEI, but that's also intentional. I love to see people that we don't normally see on stage speaking as subject matter experts about the thing. And so that's what I have is a panel of subject matter experts, but I did also want to just, for anyone who's here because they were like, DEI work is the best, we agree. But we didn't talk about it specifically because I really feel like it's a missed opportunity to have underrepresented voices only showing up to talk about what it's like to be underrepresented. I feel like it's excessive focus on what makes you different as opposed to what makes you a unique and valuable voice. And so just wanted to give that full piece of context to everybody in case you were wondering. Now the final question for our panel, and then your questions, hopefully. Would you do it again?
Absolutely, yes.
I have every release since, and I don't plan on stopping.
That's awesome. Yes, I would. Absolutely.
Hooray! We win. All right, we have, I think, like 10 minutes for questions from the audience. Yes, we have one here in the... We're running mics around. Nope, running bodies around.
Any future plans, either for another one exactly like this, or any other sort of deliberately constructed team?
In general, yes, I would always be happy to do it. In the moment, people asked me that frequently. After they finished asking me if this was like me trying to say that men didn't matter, they then would be like, are you gonna do one every year? And on the one hand, sure, I think it would be great if we could do one every year. But also, I never wanted to get to a point where it was like, well, here's this gimmicky one release a year where they're trying to prove that women exist. Like, we do exist, and we should just be allowed to do contributions all year long. I got real preachy, and I'll bring my voice back down. But also, I mean it. Voice back up. So yes, I would do it again if people were interested and willing to do it with me. But specifically, I do think the most important part of this particular release is that we brought you along in buddy systems, we supported you through it, and then encouraged as many people to come back as possible and as we're willing and able. And I think that that's the most important part of doing a release like this. I know that was not literally a question for me, but I think it kind of was. Do you all have an answer?
We already said we'd do it, so.
Stamp of approval. Next question.
Oh, okay. So, as the mother of one of the youngest members of your release team,
Amen.
what is your advice to other young women, young non-binary people, or even just young people in general who want to get involved in contribution?
Who's the youngest in our panel?
I'm not the youngest, but I'm going to say I can't wait till kids camps come back online.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I'm definitely not the youngest on this board. So we have a program in WordPress called Kids Camp, and our main organizer or point of contact, how do I refer to Sandy's title, is Sandy, and you can find her at the GoDaddy booth outside of this. So we're still in a holding pattern for that. So I know that the DeRosia kids have been at a lot of WordCamps, so keep doing that, and then help connect them to people that would be open to mentoring. Now, some of that looks like, parent of young ones. There's a certain time at which the age would be appropriate for that type of thing. And so there are opportunities to sort of watch along. What I did with my high school students, I had high school students watching the core release party when Josephine shipped. I told them the rules, like, this is radio silence, the same as what's expected. But I introduced, we're going to go get the beta files, and we're going to test them at these points and see what this feature does and what that feature does. And I had another group of students that were adults a little bit later. And so the testing, the calls for testing that go on, make.wordpress.org/test, you'll see calls for testing in there that are step-by-step directions. One of the best things that kids could do is like try and follow these directions and record what's happening on your screen. And if things break, let's know about it. I don't want to say it's great that things break, but it's great when we get feedback.
I was going to say it's a little great. Like if you can get it to break before we get it to the world, that's good, actually.
Right.
Come break our stuff before it gets to the world, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. So my quick question is, yay, all of this. So there's lots of people here, some of which have probably contributed before, some of which probably have never contributed, and some of them are going, how do I do this? So if folks are out here going, how do I do this? What do you tell them?
I'm going to check for context here. Are you asking like, what's the website? Or are you asking like, what is philosophically and emotionally what you have to prepare yourself for?
What's the website? How do I sign up? How do I jump on board?
Who wants to take that one? Anybody can. You all know it.
Start at wordpress.org.
Make.wordpress.org.
Make.wordpress.org is going to be where you're going to start. That's where all of the teams are. You can read the descriptions. You can see what those teams are responsible for. If you're not a coder, don't worry. There's plenty to do. You can transcribe WordPress TV. Today's, I assume, is going to go on WordPress.tv, all of the things that are happening at WordCamp Montclair. Somebody's got to transcribe those so that it's an accessible camp. That's one thing that you can do. You can be on the marketing team. You can be on the polyglots team. I can't even think of all of them, but there are so many ways to be involved.
Documentation. Training. Yeah.
There are 3 of us in the room right now, at least, to come talk to you about training.
And if core is your thing, but the big core room is terrifying, which I totally understand, we have a bunch of little core rooms that are specific about features, and you can just go to that core room and be like, hello, it's 30,000 people in there. I can't talk in there, but there are only 10,000 in here. I'll talk here. That's also good.
And if you don't want to get involved in a core, there's just so many ways you can be involved in the open source project. Just this last year, we opened up the photo gallery. You can submit photos to the photo gallery. Guess what? You get a badge on WordPress.org just for submitting photos. We have a team. Several of us are here this weekend who are on the photo team who approve those, or not, into the photo gallery. And we have badges for doing that. And so, I mean, I like the gamification. I like my badges. I think it's super cool. But there's so many ways to be involved before you even think about stepping into core if you want to. But if you don't, there's so much in the open source project that you can be involved in.
You do actually get dumped directly into core when you first sign up for a thing that we have not mentioned at all, which is the community Slack instance. You can get an invitation at chat.wordpress.org. When we're referring to like the release party and the rooms for working, like that's what we're talking about. We don't all just like go live on Antarctica together or something. They're not physical rooms.
That would be cool, though.
Josepha, the training team has some of these resources on Learn. I will tweet them out later on the Montclair WC Montclair hashtag about how to set up your account, how to join Slack, all of those good things. And if you are not using Twitter and you can't find that, see me today. I'll also be at the after party.
After camp email. It'll go out to everybody.
It'll be in the after camp email. Yes, you have no excuses. Any other questions? Burning questions? Yeah. She's going to run.
I guess it's less a question and more a comment, which is I was also on the release team. This is only my second. This is my second WordCamp, and I've heard one of the smaller ones, and I feel like part of the purpose of this release, the 5.6 release, was to engage more women and people of diversity in our community. And just being in this audience, I see a ton of us
Can you
under
raise your
as
hands?
part of the release.
5.6 folks? Oh, look at them all over there. I love you.
I mean, out of 56 women, that's actually a fair amount of people. So I say, good job, everyone. Yay!
Excellent note. Excellent note. How much time do we have? I tell the story now? Okay. I'm going to tell you all the story of why we had to do this. And by we, I mean why I decided I had to do this for WordPress. So I came to WordPress in 2009, 2010 through the community side of things, which is very comfortable for me. Like bringing people together makes sense. And so when I first learned that I was going to run a release, I was going to be the first-ish ever release coordinator for 5.0, which was one of the most dramatic, like guaranteed dramatic releases that we were going to have had for the last 10 years at that point. I was so nervous. I had been watching the core channel for years and keeping up to date with everything for years and just had all of these same thoughts of like, I can't do this. And look at all of these important people, these smart people. I don't know how to code. Why does anyone listen to me about anything? Like all of that was going through my mind. And so I was told, like, you're going to be the release coordinator for 5.0, which is the one where we merged the new block editor. And my first ever core chat that I ran, I'm getting short of breath thinking about it. I had Jeff Paul, who had been running the core team for years. I had him in my DMs, and he was like, I'm here for you. You can do this. Get in there and, you know, run a meeting and bring people together and help them learn and grow and whatever. Do your thing, girl. And I was like, eh. And so I got in there and ran my first ever core chat and was having just this constant side chat with Jeff. Like, is this the worst thing? Should they stop? Should I make them quit talking about everything? Should they move on? Like, what do I do? Because I just didn't know the etiquette. And at the end of that first meeting, when we went to open floor, I felt like I had really done a good job. And I just opened it up like, hey, everybody, what thoughts do you have? What questions do you have for me? Because I'm going to be helping to run this release. And I had like 5 or 6 men, because that's mostly what's in there, really call me out and question why I was doing it and what authority anyone had to be advocating for this merge and what the timeline was, and just like badgering me with questions that I didn't know the answer to. I had just arrived on the scene as far as anybody knew. And And in that moment, because I always feel like the only way to fail forward is for someone to be like, you're failing, come with me. I just announced to all of them, like, this is incredibly scary for me, and you're not making it easier. Like, there are 1,000 of you, and it's just me, and I'm learning how to do this. And I need you to, like, tone it down. And they apologized-ish, and also did tone it down-ish. But I had to just, like, go and find the most prolific release leads we had ever had on some of our most contentious releases we'd ever had, and be like, how do you run a release? What are the questions I should ask? Is there code back there, or is it just monkeys? Like, I had to ask I had to go find people to just learn how to do anything about a release, and no one was showing up to be like, I got you. They showed up and they're like, I got you, and then went to a different room to do it. And I was like, but I need to know. Like, I need to know how this goes. We came out just fine. That release went off just fine. But in the wake of it, that is the thing that really stuck out for me and my experience. Everyone else was having these experiences of, like, we got in there and we did the greatest work and the worst work and the hardest, and we're the best. And I was like, I got in there and you scared me to death, and then I still did it, and then it was still scary, and then I still don't quite know what we're doing. And after that, I was talking to Jeff Paul. I was like, I'm really glad that you were there with me and for me through that, because I would not have stuck with it had it not been for him. And he was like, let's figure out how we can fix some of those things to make it better. And so we did a bunch of documentation sprints on what I had learned from all of those release leads. And that was just the kind of the start of that. And at that point is when I started doing the work to prepare an inclusive space in WordPress, so that in 2020, when it was time to do this, which I was terrified of, we had a reasonably welcome space for people to come and join, because, like, I don't ever want anyone to show up to WordPress, no matter who is paying you or not paying you, no matter whether you code or you don't code, any of those things. I never want any of you to show up to contribute to WordPress and be like, you're scary, I'm done. Because, like, I could have. And I just have never known when to back down from a fight worth having. Like, I'm not as courageous as you are, but also, like, I'm filled with fire and driven by impact. And so I was like, I'm gonna fix this today. And then I did. Not today, obviously, 2 years later. But yeah, so that's the story of Josepha's first ever leading a core release and deciding no one should ever have to do that again. And with that, I believe that is the end of this. Before you all head out, I do want to reiterate that as much as we had all of these stories about how scary it was and how fulfilling, I think, at the end, I think that you all of our 5.6 contributors out there, and all of our 5.6 contributors wherever my camera is, I don't know where it is, wherever you are at home, you all did amazing work to move WordPress forward. Not only WordPress the CMS, because that was a great release, but also WordPress the community and WordPress the people who show up for each other and with each other. The documentation that you all added to my documentation just blew all of what I had done out of the water, because I also had things that I kind of knew and kind of didn't know, didn't think to document. Every single person who showed up for that release showed either ways to move it forward or ways that we could have done it better, because when we know better, we do better. And if you're gonna fail, might as well try something new next time. Fail better next time, do it again, you know? And so I want to give a big public thank you to all of the not only women and non-binary folks who showed up for 5.6, but also all of our really, really supportive and constant mentors who showed up and helped us to know, like, you do belong here. And so thank you, everyone, for that, making WordPress better. And again, Josepha, Michelle, Courtney, Ebonie, thank you so much for your time today. We'll see you around in the hallway track.